Cybernation Uncensored.
Here we are for another episode of Tales for the Forlorn Dopes. I am your host, Cybersmily.
I am your co-host, Wisdom 000. Greetings, programs. We're very glad to be here today. We've got a very special guest, Mr. Ed Bolme, prolific writer for Artal Saurian and editor, as well as the creator of Raish Bartmos.
Yes. So, Ed, before we get into it, like I mentioned before, we have this little survey quiz type of thing, which we're going to
absolutely hit me.
Ask you a couple of quick questions, hopefully with quick answers. So, first question, 2020, 2045, or 2077?
2020.
Favorite cyberpunk role?
Honestly, gosh, the fixer.
Okay. Favorite piece of cyberware?
Gotta love the monofilament wires.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Favorite cyberpunk weapon?
Big pistols.
Okay.
Yep.
Favorite cyberpunk red or 2020 book?
Raish Bartmos' Guide to the Net.
Least favorite cyberpunk.
No surprise there, huh?
Yeah.
No, not in the slightest.
Least favorite cyberpunk red or 2020 book?
One that I should have written on but didn't.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely getting more into that later.
Pan Am, Judy, or Rogue?
Rogue.
Lucy, Rebecca, or Kiwi?
Lucy.
Carrie, River, or Goro?
Goro. Oh, River. What am I thinking?
David, Maine, or Pilar?
David.
Favorite Night City gang?
You know, honestly, I'd have to go with any of the Yo gangs.
Okay.
From CyberGen.
Yep.
Yo, that's every bit as valid as anything else.
Correct. Favorite mega corporation?
Militech.
Favorite cyberpunk movie?
Oh, criminy. For a long time, it was The Matrix, but it may have been replaced. I'd have to really think about that one.
TikTok.
I mean, Johnny Mnemonic was fun, but
We'll hold off for later on that one. Okay.
If that one broke you,
Yeah.
this one will too. What's your favorite cyberpunk fictional character?
need you ask?
Probably not. Well, there you go.
Raish Bartmos. Dave Ackerman once said that writing Raish was deeply therapeutic for me.
Oh, that's good.
I just read that passage this morning.
Gibson, Dick, or Stevenson?
Dick.
Favorite cyberpunk novel?
Hardwired.
Is Shadowrun cyberpunk?
No.
Okay.
All right, that's the questionnaires, man. I think this was one of our record time.
Yeah,
Nice.
we went through that like we were supposed to. Like it was quick and fast and in a hurry.
Often, they were expecting like favorite Halloween candy or something. So.
Well, some of the questions turn into, the Monty Python skit. My favorite cyberpunk gang is Bozos. No, wait! Exactly. Well, thank you for being on the show. We're just going to rattle off some of your credits. So you were an editor for the 2013 box set. You were an editor for Rocker Boy, Near Orbit, Neo Tribes, Eurotour. You were a writer for Night City, Home of the Brave, Rach Bartmoss's Guide to the Net, Rach Bartmoss's Brainware Blowout, Firestorm Stormfront, Alice Through the Mirror Shades, Cyber Generation Core, Virtual Front, Eco Front, Media Front, Bastille Day. You worked on Castle Falkenstein with the Lost Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, Six Guns and Sorcery. You worked on Mechton's Starblade Battalion. Paranoia, you did the deleted for security reasons, Paranoia Recycled, the Alpha Update, Alpha Complexity, Bot Abusers Manual, the R&D Catalog, Recycling Pack, the People's Glorious Revolutionary Adventure. For Dungeons and Dragons, you wrote several novels, Bound by Iron, Eberron, The Inquisitor Book 1, The Orb of Zerat. Is that how it's pronounced? Right? For Book 2.
Orb of Zoriad.
Got it. Traders of the Sovereign Host, The Alabaster Staff, Realms of the Dragon, The Year of the Rogue Dragons. You worked on...
I love the Alabama staff.
Thank you.
You worked on Legend of the Five Rings, The Way of the Unicorn, the Four Winds Saga, The Stone Throne as a novel. Steel Throne, sorry. My glasses are a little blurry.
Book.
Yes. The World of Necroscope, which my wife loved that series. She didn't play the game, but she just loves the Necroscope. Vampire.
Yeah, Brian Lumley created a hell of a world. And
Yeah, me and my wife met him. He was a blast.
What'd you say, Ed?
That whole series was really creepy.
Yes.
Very well done.
It was really creepy.
You also worked.
It was a nice change from the Anne Rice stuff that was coming out at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes. You worked on Fleet, The Survivor's Guide for Shatter Zone, Alf Bakshi's Wizards, a novelization.
Alf Bakshi's Wizards. Yep.
Montagar, a source book for Wizards Basic Adventure game. Aliens Recognition Guide, Volume 1 for the Men in Black. Yeah, and you also did...
And 4 children's stories about Jesus.
Yep.
I'm sure we missed some.
You might have, but they were small, so...
Yes.
You have this giant portfolio of credits. What was your favorite line to work on?
Oh, that's the two things that I enjoyed the most and was able to do the swiftest were anything in Paranoia and anything having to do with Rach Bartmoss.
Excellent. I mean, I loved your Paranoia books, man. They were... I was... It wasn't until like 2005 that I even knew Alice Through the Mirror Shades existed, and I'd already owned all the other Paranoia books. I don't know how that one completely escaped me. And I broke out into cold sweats when I found it because I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. There's an official crossover and it's written by Ed? Holy shit.
Yes,
So that was a funny thing on that. Scott Palter got the idea to do Paranoia crossovers, and the first people he went to were Mike and Lisa Pondsmith to see about crossing with Cyberpunk. And
I mean, it's such a perfect mix.
It is, and he broached the subject, and Mike Pondsmith was he was all in favor, but he said, "But we want to name the writer." And Scott Palter's like, "Well, that could be a problem because I know who I want." Fortunately, it was the same person. So,
oh, that's awesome.
cool. Yeah, that's. I mean,
So, yeah,
So
that was very. That was a lot of fun.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So how did you first start working with Altar Sarian, Mike, and Lisa?
So I started writing back in college. I was actually running a first edition Paranoia game with my college buddies, and they kept badgering me to submit the stuff that I was doing because it was funnier than what had been published. And they badgered me enough that I finally said, "Fine, if I write this up, will you just get off my back?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Fine, I'll do it." And so I wrote out. I spent, I think it was 15 months during college doing the first draft of Alpha Complexities, and sent it in, and it got rejected. But it was a 9-page rejection letter
Wow.
oh
detailing everything I needed to fix. And so I spent the next like 6 months, 6 to 9 months fixing all that stuff, resubmitting it, and that became Alpha Complexities.
That's cool.
And yeah, so then it was getting released, and it was going to get released at Gen Con. And so on kind of a wild hair, I drove from Houston to Milwaukee, and ended up mooching a space on the floor of my editor's bedroom at the hotel. And yeah, that was my first Gen Con, and did some volunteer work behind the booth for the folks at West End, and cruised the floor. And when I was cruising the floor, I came across this small little booth with a black and white box set of Cyberpunk. I'm like, Cyberpunk, because I just finished reading Hardwired, and it was fresh in my mind. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to write for these people. And that was when I met Mike and Lisa. And I guess having a paranoia chop right off the bat was enough for Mike, and that's how I got started.
That's cool.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it was a rejection letter. It sounded like it was notes from the editor to fix
That's
your
pretty much exactly
manuscript.
it. I mean, 9 pages. It's like, okay, this section's a little too similar here. I don't understand what's going on here. Need to fix this. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's not a
mean,
rejection. That's a critique. That's
exactly.
it's in depth.
So
Um, Man, and that seems to be we mention this every time, but that seems to be the case. Is people just happen to like gamers just happen to run across Mike, and they just get invited into the fold like that.
yeah, it was actually astounding because I was quickly part of the family at Artel Sorian, which with West End, I was one of the freelancers, right? Very different feel. Um,
Yeah, I can imagine.
which is I think partly why everybody is always so loyal to Artel Sorian. Is same thing with AEG in the board game realm. It's like if you're there, you're family,
Yep.
and that yeah, just an entirely different culture.
I mean, I've never been brought into the fold, but there are definite times where Mike has had my back. Uh, and I just, to the extent that I've never heard, like Artal Sorian has done stuff for its community that I've never seen other companies do, or at least they were the first I ever saw them do. Um, they were the first I ever saw to just completely embrace the online community to the point where they brought in people from the online community to work on Chrome 4.
Yep.
Uh, you
Yep,
had
you got good brains who are eager to help. Let them do it. It's not a secret.
Yeah, because if you come across somebody who's passionate about your work as well, you know, that's
yeah,
an asset you want.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you want to help them help you?
Very true.
exactly. I mean, as we've established, you were with the Cyberpunk franchise from the beginning, from the 2013 box set. Um,
Oh, those were the days.
yeah, because I mean the box set almost comes across like the box itself is high quality, but the actual booklets that came with the box, I mean they almost come across like they were printed off on a dot matrix.
There's definitely that sort of, oh, we can afford one spot color feel to them,
Yeah,
which is endearing, and it was presented as minimalist, which is also clever.
yeah, it's
It was
gorgeous.
also the time that for whatever reason, probably because of the original first edition D&D, when it was a white box and they didn't even call it the original white box version. I actually had one of those until I got beat to death. And but every role playing game was coming out in boxes.
Yep.
Cyberpunk did, Paranoia did. Just for whatever reason, everyone had to box a role playing game, and it was just, I don't know, it's a shtick for a good while, and then that thankfully faded. But
Well,
that
I,
was a weird time.
I think it was probably maybe a little cheaper, um, because you could just take pages and staple them together. Like I remember
That is
the
true.
Traveler
You
book.
could saddle stitch the books,
Yeah,
yeah, and then they'd lay flat too, which is also nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think back then there
Um,
was very little art in a lot of the gaming books, which was it was
and
nice at the time, and you can see the
I mean,
growth from it.
speaking of art, you guys, like, it didn't actually dawn on me until, I went back and started looking through credits and trying to track down people. Like, I'd always looked at the art in the books and was all like, that's kind of that looks a lot like Nagel. And then I realized that actually is Nagel.
Amazing, isn't
I
it? Just
mean,
I
like,
love that style. I really do that.
oh, it's fantastic. It's defining for the genre. Like it's instantly puts you in that 80s, late 80s, early 90s, like near futuristic mindset. Just the sheer look, the simplicity of the lines. But
Yep.
I couldn't believe it when I realized that was actually Patrick Nagel. Like, holy shit! And that had to have been just before he took off.
Yeah, yeah, it was. That's my guess. I mean, I didn't deal at all with the art, but um, yeah, he. My understanding is that he was, when it came time to continue the line and so forth, he'd already taken off, and his prices went way past what Artel Sorian was able to afford.
Yeah,
So
I can only imagine. I mean,
when you're
like,
doing album covers for Duran Duran,
yeah, a year after I bought the box set, suddenly his posters are in every music store on the planet, and
Yep,
they're fine art, and like, holy crap.
yep.
Um, did you ever imagine that the franchise would go as far as it did, or it has?
Never, never. I mean, we're we're role playing games. Who
Yeah,
notices us? Um, yeah, I never would have thought. Uh, and I mean, it's exciting to see. I'm ecstatic for Mike and Lisa. It's awesome. Um, I was actually there when they were negotiating um, the rights to Netrunner at WotC.
oh yeah.
Yeah, I was allowed to be in the room because I lived 10 miles from Wizards of the Coast, and Mike and Lisa were flying up, so this asked me to come along, and
I mean, you got to have Raish Bartmos there if you're going to talk about net running. I mean, it just only makes
and
sense.
yeah, they actually, I mean, they flat up offered a sizable sum to Mr. Pondsmith to just buy all rights to Cyberpunk, and he didn't. There was not even a moment's hesitation. Just like, nope, not for sale. So, which I was very proud of him for.
Yeah, that ultimately proved to be a very wise move. Um, but I mean, if they had tried that, maybe 10 years later, it might have been a different story. Because after V3 came and went, like there was really no activity for years.
Well,
Until
Yeah.
the
like the Netrunner card game became was bought out by who was it? Tip
Yeah,
of
but
my tongue.
that didn't occur until
10,
That
like a
was like,
decade
2010s,
later.
yeah.
Like
yeah,
Netrunner
it
for
was,
a very brief time was more popular than Magic. Like it was considered a better game.
Yeah.
And then just as quickly as that flame burst up, it died completely. I never did understand why.
I don't know either. I think the asymmetry may have really messed with folks.
Yeah.
I do know that the original WotC version, um, WotC suffered from some hubris at the time, and
Yeah, a lot
they
of that.
made the cards exceptionally expensive to produce. Right? They had that silver border
Yep.
on them
Yeah,
that was apparently just exceptionally expensive because the whatever that silver was did not want to stick to the cardstock. Um, but took extra effort to make it happen. Um, so I think the sheer expense of it was also a handicap for them. And as I recall, they used a different type of cardstock itself as well. So I wonder, I mean, almost all games except for Magic have indexed down in sales as the expansions go on.
Yep.
Uh, and
it's true.
I also wonder if it wasn't enough, projected to be enough of a success, as WotC literally wanted to have the second Magic. They wanted to have two Magics, right?
Yeah, they definitely got a little greedy with that kind of thing. I
And
always thought it would have worked better if I'm not a fan of collectible card games. I like the idea of them. I like the rules. I like playing them. But the whole monetary investor angle to it, where these cards are rare and worth tons of money, and you'll never get your hands on them, it chaps me in all the wrong places.
I'm with you. It's, originally talking to the folks at WotC, that the idea was that they would just be kind of hard to find. Nobody expected people to buy Magic by the case. So,
Yeah,
um, just to get those cards. And which, if you actually look back at the original things, the original alpha set, some of those cards are so broken, it's amazing. Because they were expecting just rarity to be the limiting factor.
Right.
yeah, yeah. The game balance kind of goes out the window.
Yeah. So,
But but also in
anyways,
those days they were just printing money. Literally.
that they were, and I saw that again when I was actually working at Wizards when Pokemon came out,
Oh, that's
and
another one.
you want to talk about printing money? Oh my goodness!
Yeah, they
So
they definitely got their second batch with that. I was working at the comic book store at the time when the first when Magic first started appearing, and it blew my mind just how popular it got out of almost nowhere. Like suddenly it was just this giant explosion of cards. And it's funny because it happened at the same time that Pogs hit the scene, and
oh
those blew
yeah,
up and then died completely. A horrible,
horrible
like,
gargling death that they deserved.
yeah, exactly. Like, dude, you're collecting milk caps. What the hell is wrong with you?
So it was funny because I mean I remember seeing Wizards of the Coast. Here's one of those opportunities that I missed. Um, Mike and Lisa actually suggested I go and talk to the guys at the Wizards of the Coast booth. This is pre-Magic, and when they were just doing like generic role-playing supplement stuff.
Like Ars Magic.
But yeah, like, a system neutral guide to deities or stuff
Yeah.
like that, right? Just generic role-playing books. And I swung by their booth, and there were, the workers were talking to various people. I looked over the offerings they had, and I'm like, nothing here is piquing my interest, and so I just didn't bother. And the next year they came out with Magic, and I stopped by the booth and managed to swag a couple of decks and a couple of boosters. And the year after that, I lived in Seattle at the time, and so one of the little games I would play with myself as I flew to Gen Con was, when do I spot the first gamer? And usually be somewhere in Denver. I could usually spot my first, okay, that guy's a gamer. So I get on the airplane, and apparently the entire WotC company shows up. I'm like, well, I guess I have an answer to this question this year, don't I?
One of us. Google
That's
gobble, Google
exactly it.
gobble.
So yeah, I could have been in there pre-Magic,
Damn.
which that would have changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Yeah, you always look at those instances and times of your life. You're like, wow, if I had done that.
Yep.
So
If
let's
if I had just tripped over my own shoelaces long enough to pause and think about it a second,
yeah.
I could have
So
been very.
let's get the elephant in the room. So you created Rach Barfmoss, arguably the most influential and controversial NPC in the game. And it's even referenced in Cyberpunk 2077. The claim of him being, the best netrunner. And I don't know if you've
I mean,
looked at YouTube channels, but there are quite a few out there talking about his history and who he was. So I want to
So
elaborate on
let's
how
be
he got created.
let's be clear. I didn't actually create Raish Bartmoss.
Oh, okay.
I did, however, take the glimmer that existed and basically built everything. I mean, Mike came up with the concept, came up with the name, and when they were going to do Ray Spartmoss's Guide to the Net, he turned to me because at the time he called me his secret weapon. Um, and he said, I want you to do this. And I said, okay, what's this guy like? And he says, I wish I could remember the exact words, but he says, Hunter S. Thompson on steroids. Like, okay, I vaguely knew who Hunter S. Thompson was, having seen at least the advertisements and trailers for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And I'd read some Harlan Ellison, and so I just decided, okay, so he wants a guy who's brilliant and out of control. And rather than go and watch a bunch of stuff and potentially constrain my imagination, I just said, okay, I'll just sit down and just start vomiting on the page. And so I wrote the introduction to the Guide to the Net, and I'm pulling up things like delirium dreams from my childhood and random weird thoughts that I had, and just all this random stuff and dumping it in there. And I'm like, I wonder if this is what he wants. And so I sent it off, and he read through it, and I gave him a call and said, so what do you think? And he said, ragged edge of brilliance. But I'd not ever heard the term ragged edge before. So I was like, are you saying I'm just at the edge of getting brilliant? Or is this what you want? And he assured me that it is exactly what he wanted. So I just pulled the cork and let my unconscious gush out its fire hose of doom.
Okay.
And
So it was Mike who actually at least came up with a preliminary idea of who
he
Raish
came up with the
was.
structure and pointed me in a direction.
Got it. And you just fleshed it all out.
And I just ran with it way farther than I ever thought.
I mean, you ran beautifully. If that means anything.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's my favorite character to write. Oh my goodness, I could. The weird thing is, it was for the Brainware Blowout. I was talking to Derek Quintanar, and he said, look, we have this thing. It's a Brainware Blowout. We want Ray Spartmoss to write the introduction to it, and it's basically the Netrunner's equivalent to all the gun books that we've done for the solos. And he said, basically, and we were talking about it, and I said, we could either have the whole staff work on it all morning, or we could just give it to you and you'll come out with something twice as good in about an hour. And I remember I wrote that intro starting at 1:30 in the morning and finished it at like 2:15 and fired it off thinking it was a pile of crap and they were going to ask to have it redone. And talked to them in the morning. They're like, oh my goodness, we're all dying over here. So yeah, it ran as was.
I mean, he's such an interesting character that just fully fits in not just the franchise itself, but in the genre. Like, he's ultra paranoid, computer genius that just he's the kind of guy who will burn down his own house rather than let somebody break a window.
Yes, that is exactly it. He is like, I don't know what it is. As I mentioned earlier, Dave Ackerman said this has got to be deeply therapeutic for you. He is like all my dark nature combined with all my idealism. And I don't understand how it works. And I don't understand how I can just, when I would start writing as Ray Schwartmoss, I would just go, and just whacking it out and whacking it out. And I did basically no editing other than spell checks on anything I wrote for him. I wish I understood the actual implications of this.
I mean, he was important enough in the regular 2020 franchise, but like, he really, really takes off in the Cyber Generation books, where like that's where these legacy characters suddenly become massively important, and he's the guy behind the strings of, like, he's the Elminster of Cyberpunk, as it were.
That is exactly it. And the funny thing is, of course, that my personal playtest group had no respect for him at all. All of them disrespected him up, down, and sideways. They were such obnoxious jerks.
I mean, that is the definition of player, I think. Obnoxious jerk.
And calling him Bark Mulch and Pete Moss and
Well, my last name being
they could too.
Piedmont, I can understand Pete Moss. But yeah, there's also part of the community who just see him as kind of too over the top, just because of
the Elminster of Cyberpunk.
So with the book, so there's comments from Spider Murphy. Was Spider Murphy like either David or Derek or?
Spider Murphy was mostly David.
Okay.
He had to deal with me. He called me up. He's like, I can't believe this. Now I'm having to do all these side notes and sidebars and footnotes and all the stuff that I'm having to extract. I'm like, yeah, that poor guy. I made a lot of work for him.
But I have
So Ray started out as an NPC?
He's always been an NPC.
Okay, I didn't. Well, see, that's the thing is, it's part of our like side quest in doing these interviews to try and figure out which of these legacy characters were actual PCs at one point, and which were just NPCs, who played the characters, who created them. Like
So
Like,
I can speak for nothing of that. I've actually never played in a Pondsmith game.
okay,
So Ray Bartmoss existed as a netrunner with a crazy Hunter S. Thompson personality prior to my arrival.
got it. Yeah, because we were talking to Benjamin about Adam Smasher, who's another big nemesis, I think, in the 2077, as well as the anime. And like how did he come about, right? And basically Benjamin was, oh yeah, I just created him because I wanted to write this one article in Solo of Fortune, from the point of view of a complete cyber psycho.
That sounds like Benjamin. That's funny. No, it's yeah, honestly, uh as I think about it, I cannot think of a character that I created that has endured.
I mean, Raish has definitely endured.
But yeah,
Uh,
but again, just did I create him? Did not create him? I mean, that's a good question.
Mike
We
might
could,
have, it's like a Spider-Man, like Stanley, Jack Kirby, or Steve Ditko conversation. Like,
yeah. So it's like
yeah,
it's
Stan Lee
like a
created the concept, but then Stan Lee or Steve Ditko fleshed that all out.
it's or a line segment with like an open dot at the end where it didn't start here, but it continues everywhere past there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I
I mean,
consider,
Raish Bartmoss is me. It's the scary thing.
well, I consider the Guide to the Net one of my top three. It is in within my top three books of Cyberpunk 2020. Just because I
Here's the
love the detail of and fleshing out what the net was, and then the voice of Bartmouse, kind of describing it all was
I
just
mean, I got the guide to the net before I had internet access. So I did not understand the internet at all, and that book helped me understand without any preconceptions, without any bias, what the internet in Cyberpunk was supposed to be, what it was supposed to look like, what it was supposed to feel like, and it does so perfectly. If I'm being honest.
well, thank you very much. The one negative association I have with that book, um, every year they'd run the Gamma Awards, uh, and award a bunch of awards
yeah.
for a variety of um, projects. The year that Raish Bartmoss's Guide to the Net came out, they didn't have the awards.
Oh,
I don't remember why, but they didn't have it. And then, so next year, when they had the awards the following year, Ray Bartmoss's Guide to the Net was like a year and a half old
right.
and lost out to something like, GURPS Fourth or something like that. And I was like, all right, this just sucks. 'Cause,
that is some shit timing right there.
yeah, yeah, that was, for as many things as I'd done, I'd always come really close, but never actually won the Gamma Award. And of course, I finally did win one with Six Guns and Sorcery.
Okay.
And when I got the plaque, my name was misspelled.
Oh,
Ah,
was it spelt with
I
an?
do not mean to laugh at your misfortune, but Jesus,
Oh no,
that
it is a laughable moment. There is no doubt.
Was it spelt
It was
with
like
an A instead of an O?
no, it was Blome.
Jeez.
below me.
Edward Blome.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's rough.
That yeah. That was like, yeah, this just figures. Yeah.
So, have you been keeping up with, the expanse of the cyberpunk property with the computer game as well as the anime, and now I guess in the works there's going to be a live action, movie or
I,
series, I
I,
think.
I knew I knew about the computer game. I mean, it got lots of press. My machine's unable to handle it, so I didn't even try. Um, the anime I knew about, I have not seen an episode, and I had not heard about the live action. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the live action was just recently announced. It's going to be a Netflix series. I mean, they're the ones who were responsible for the anime, so I'm expecting good things. I'm hoping it's a little bit more down to earth than the anime.
I'm just going to go ahead and put out right now, whoever's in charge at Netflix, if you want someone to voice Raish Barmas the way he's supposed to be voiced, I am available.
Oh.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Like
Can we-
Netflix.
I was
pay
actually,
attention.
I was actually one of the things that frustrated me a little bit with Netrunner is they actually didn't call me in to do any of the flavor text stuff. They just did it all in house,
Yeah.
and as a result of which, there was a few bits of attributed to Bart Moss that like, no, he never
He
would
wouldn't have
use the word
said Wrigley.
He
Yeah,
never
we.
would say Wiggly ever.
Um,
So,
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
computer game, we're not 100% sure if it's actually him, but there is a bit of a side quest in which you find the body of a netrunner in a refrigerator out in a junkyard. And Johnny is, of course, Johnny being he is the most unreliable narrator
Yep.
in the game. He says, "Oh my God, that's Reach Bartmoss," and you're like, really? After 50 years being in a refrigerator out in the hot sun,
there's still ice in this motherfucker.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Raish is very resourceful, man. Do not discount him ever.
right?
Yeah, no. I think popular consensus is he's still running around out there somewhere. Because if there's anybody who's gonna fake his own death, it's gonna be that guy.
Oh yeah, and he'll do it twice, just to make sure.
Plus, I'm sure he has like various clones of him from his own version of Soul Killer that
Oh
made
yeah,
copies of him.
he's got the rabbits and so forth.
Yes. So, were you part of the blowing up of the world, as it were, in the Firestorm series?
Destruction of the internet.
I was not. I was told it was coming, and so I had to. That informed some of the stuff that I was doing, but that was a decision that was made in house. And I've actually, to be clear, I've always been a freelance for Artel Sorian. I've never been employed in the direct zone. The only time I was in house was right after my divorce. They let me work in literally a supply closet at their office for 3 months, just so I could be out of Seattle and away from everything.
Yeah.
So they were very kind that way. So I called Dave Ackerman. I said I was getting a divorce, and he said, he invited me to come down and stay with him as long as I needed. Next thing he did was he called Pondsmith, and Mike said, "Get him down here," and he said he's already on his way.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful.
So yeah, literally worked out of a supply closet.
That's to your point that they treated you like family.
Exactly.
Because I know other employers who had freelance writers would not do that for a freelance writer.
Yeah, no.
They would be like, "Oh yeah, that sucks.
Sucks to be you.
Yeah.
When's my stuff turning in?"
Yeah.
So
Tell me when you're settled, and we'll send some work your way."
so that was actually when I was working on Six Guns and Sorcery, and curiously, my recent divorce informed the very ending of the narrative of that story. So, which I'll just leave as a research project.
Got it. So what
Okay, so
cyber
if
generate? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Derek.
I was just gonna ask. Since we've established that you like the decision to destroy the internet and all that didn't come from you, what direction would you have gone with that? Just out of curiosity. Like what would you see Raish's steps being at the end of the corporate war?
You know, I could go two directions. One would be to turn the entire internet into effectively disinformation. Imagine the internet where the race personally decides what everybody gets, right? You know, imagine a situation. I mean, I've imagined this, you know, even separate from just separately. Like, you know, imagine an AI gets in the internet, and I call you over Teams, and we have a chat, and the computer, the AI, is actually controlling what we hear. And so, you know, I could be saying, you know, hey, I'm really concerned about the rise of AI. And, you know, you say back, you know, yes, it concerns me too. But what I hear is, oh, no, I don't think it's any big deal. Right. Because all the data is being filtered and adjusted. Right. That would be one way to go, which then puts people in this horrifying position of needing the internet to get stuff, but not being able to fully trust anything they get. The other would be to actually wipe it out completely. But then that turns into a post-apocalyptic wastelanders. Is probably not the way to go for Cyberpunk. But it does balkanize everything, which would actually be kind of cool. That was one of the things I liked about Hardwired, was that everything was balkanized.
Yeah, that would definitely be an interesting way to go.
So,
Those are just a couple ideas.
yeah. So, speaking of the aftermath, what Cyber Generation book were you most proud of? Because you did write quite a few.
Honestly, I think probably Bastille Day, because I think it just held together the best.
That was my favorite of them.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really sad that CyberGen did not take off the way I think it deserved to. But I think it was a little too kind of esoteric role playing. You know, role playing that whole kind of junior high, give or take 5 years.
It I think it was throwing too many things in the pot at once.
Yeah,
I think if it had just been the like younger kid role playing, uh, it that would have been probably okay. Or if it had just been like, let's add superpowers to Cyberpunk, that could have been okay. But to throw them all together, and I think it might have been a little bit much for people.
you know
Like,
what I would love to do though. Oh, I would love to do basically an anime on that storyline.
I mean, it would lend itself to that so perfectly.
So I have structure already all built out in my head, but sadly it'll probably never see the light of day.
Well, I mean, the
If
Edgerunners
there's any
anime
anime,
was
if there's any
pretty.
anime artists out there who want to team up, let me know.
Well,
Like the cybernetics is presented in the Edgerunners anime were pretty much superpowers. So it came pretty close, and all the characters are pretty young. So
Oh, I have to go and check that out.
were there any books that you really wish you had worked on? We kind of hinted at this earlier.
You know, the 2077 one, the or was it 27 or was it red? Anyways, the one is basically Bart Moss's last hurrah. I really the spirit was willing, but the flesh was weak, and I was just going through a bunch of stuff on the home front that was just brutal. My son got long COVID, and
Oh, Yeah.
Yeah. So it attacked his central nervous system, and we're talking about a guy who outscored me on the SAT by 60 points. And at his low point, playing dominoes was too hard.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, it was one of the most brutal sections of my life, where we didn't know if we were going to lose him,
Right.
and if we didn't lose him, we didn't know what was going to be left. And I'm still not fully recovered from that. There's still a part of me that's just got this kind of existential dread still around it. So yeah, it is unfortunate that was like the last book I had an opportunity to work on, and I knew I didn't have it in me to write, but I didn't want to leave Raish Bartmoss for anyone else. So
Right.
I tried, and I just couldn't pull it together. I just couldn't. So that's the one I regret. So
Man, I am
a little
I am
heavier
sorry you had to do
answer than
that.
you probably wanted.
I mean,
You
COVID
know,
was a fucked up time, and
yeah,
I
very,
mean, I think
very.
we all lost people that we cared about, or had people who, you know,
Yeah, this was
are
actually in
are
21 when it was supposed to all be
suffering.
over.
Yeah, are suffering. The long term effects of that.
Yep.
That's why it's
Right.
so very infuriating to hear all these guys who are like, "Here's the hoax." Like, I just want to strangle them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So, on the other hand, because it needs to be out there,
yeah.
he's currently got 1 year left in school, and he's running a 4 point and majoring in data analytics.
Oh
Won
man.
a 48-hour film festival in 1 year and came in second the next year. Um, Running a podcast, so he's doing well. He's
Well,
Awesome.
that's
is he
fantastic. I am
is he
I am
fully
so
recovered?
happy to hear that he is recovered at least to the point that he has.
Yeah, he is not fully recovered. He still has to kind of watch his exertion, because if he overexerts himself, then he'll crash. But no, he's doing great.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that you look at all the stuff that was written for Cyberpunk 2020 and how some of it was far off, right? Like the whole space exploration. But there's other things that are just like hitting home with, you know, corporations and the dystopian future. Even the
Yep.
various plagues that have hit.
I mean, what is COVID if not the wasting plague?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the control that media corporations have, and we're actually seeing the rise of security corporations. The Wagner Group.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I mean,
it's
hell,
kind of interesting.
Monsanto owns Blackwater now. I don't. They
Mm,
changed the name, but I mean,
Really.
that's
yep.
terrifying.
That is
Yep.
terrifying.
That is like the two most evil companies combined. Like Jesus.
Oh yeah. Actually, BlackRock. That's I'll put them. I'll put them and Google up at the top of any evil company list.
So,
What else is it? What else? Oh yeah. Also, I mean, basically what we're seeing here is, I mean, Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex, right? And I mean, if you go back and look, German industrialists were one of the major forces behind the outbreak of World War One.
yep.
Oh yeah.
But looking around now, what it looks like we have to me is we have a media pharmaceutical complex.
Yes.
So pharmaceuticals, like 2/3 of the ads now or something like that, some huge amount of money the pharmaceutical companies are paying to the media companies for advertisements.
I mean, I'll see advertisements for drugs that don't even tell me what the drug is supposed to do or what it's supposed to treat.
Oh
What the hell?
well, so doctor, hey
Just list
doctors, any of these
weird
10
sound
drugs right
effects,
for me?
side effects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Side effects: spontaneous human combustion, and Yeah, so, and these companies can pull their advertising at a moment's notice. So are they actually going to get the scrutiny that they deserve? Probably. So, yeah, that's one of the.
Everything's bought and paid for now.
Yep.
So,
To the point that, in a way, like Raish Bartmos's like disinformation structure of the internet has come to pass. Like nobody knows what's real anymore.
That is true. For some reason, fact checkers are king, even though you don't know who they are or where they check their facts from.
I
That's one of the
mean,
things.
Chat GPT, deep
yep.
fakes, AI art, like all this stuff.
Oh yeah, and the very fact that Chat GPT will generate references if it can't find actual articles.
I know.
Yeah.
And
Like, holy cats, guys, come on.
the best one was where a law firm actually used Chat GPT to post. I forget what the term was, but basically they were making an argument to the court on the defense of something, and basically Chat GPT made up citations
Wow.
where the judge was like, "What the hell is this? There's no such thing," and basically calling these lawyers out, and the lawyers were like, "Oh, well, we gotta, we had one of our assistants do the actual work on this. We're really sorry." It's like, okay, you put your name on it, therefore you are
Yep.
responsible for the
Yep.
contents of this.
Kiss the bar goodbye.
Yeah, and then I was watching another video in which basically AI content on YouTube that's being generated, specifically around what they're labeling as educational, to the point
Oh,
where
it's terrifying.
where there's videos of like how the pyramids are used to produce tons and tons of energy, but the governments don't want you to know. And they were showing this to little kids, and the little kids, "Oh yeah, hey, did you know that pyramids used to generate energy?" And they're like,
I've heard that.
"That's a lie." And they're like, "Oh, but it said it was
Wow.
educational." I'm like,
Yeah, they can't put it online if it's not true.
yeah, exactly. So just seeing some of the facts that are being portrayed, like even the legit, educators of science, they are
Yep.
starting to see their videos being copied by AI and making it and presenting it like they do, which if you're don't know any better, you would assume it's the same scientist who's presenting that data.
Wow. So actually, to jump back to your previous question, the other book I've always wanted to write a novel narrated by Raish.
It definitely would have been a must buy for me. I mean,
Talk
I'm
about
very
your
surprised that
unreliable
that never
narrator.
happened. Especially since the only two novels we did get. Oh,
Come on,
oh,
bite boy forever.
Big Boy and Bite Girl. Oh Lord. I think those
Well,
things ruined
yeah.
it for any other aspiring writers who wanted to create novels or short stories for the franchise.
Yeah,
So Mike was actually talking about putting together an anthology of short stories, and I have one that's ready. But yeah, I hope he does that.
Ooh.
yeah. I don't know if he is because I approached him at this recent Gen Con asking about it because a lot of the communities has been doing a bunch of homebrew stuff as well as doing fan fiction, and I asked him about, hey, what are you guys doing for fiction? And basically at this time they're not thinking of it because it's not always a moneymaker, right? Because it's a
Yeah, that's true.
big chance that you're not going to get the money or the return of what you invest in it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, 2077 just had a novel drop, and they've had several comics come out.
yeah, that's
Um,
different than our
I would,
Talsorian doing one.
Sure, but I mean, I think Red is every bit as interesting of a universe as 2077. I mean, it's the same universe, just an earlier time period.
It is,
Far
but
more.
I
Yeah.
think there's also some things, especially if like Ed, you want to write a short story about race, whether CDPR has to give some approvals, right, and make sure that it syncs
Yeah,
with
I think
what they
that's
want.
the biggest. Like, that's probably the biggest hurdle to reach is apparently CDPR owns the rights to everything, like within 10 years before and everything after. Uh, so that creates its own,
Yeah, it creates its own issues.
Yes,
web of entanglement, as it were.
and the other thing that Mike said at Gen Con was his deal with CDPR is kind of like taking his child and putting it in school, and he's now part of the PTA, right?
Right.
Whereas CDPR is responsible for the education of your child. So how much control is still around, I don't know.
Right.
But yes, I would love to see more fiction around Cyberpunk, but I don't know who we're going to get it from, as it were. But who knows? Maybe you can convince Mike. You still got him on speed dial, right?
I do have him. Actually, I've got his weak point. I can go in through Cody.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, actually, the last conversation that we had at Gen Con was basically along the lines of, "Holy crap, how did we get so old?" Oh man.
Yeah, I
Yes.
remember. I remember Mike announcing the birth of Cody in the back of one of the books, and now he's got his own game line coming out.
Yep.
So,
Very scary.
so are you still gaming?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's shifted a lot to board gaming.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I could not get either my kids as into role playing as I was. Um, Sad but true. Um, but
Too much
we're
math.
all avid board gamers. And I'm on a couple of online RuneQuest games. It's my poison of choice these days. The new RuneQuest Glorantha version. I've always loved RuneQuest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a popular game. It gets it. I hear nothing but good things. I'm not so much into fantasy, but Glorantha's one of the better systems I've seen.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the thing. One of the things in the new version is that character creation starts with your grandparents. All
Nice.
right, this is cool. So your grandparents' prejudices and actions have an impact on you.
Yep. I actually watched a video of character creation and how it was like, oh, your grandparents were part of this war that happened at this time, and they were on this side, and the parents and how that affected the parents afterwards. It sounded like a more expanded life path compared to Cyberpunk 2020.
And I've actually seen that in action, right? I actually got back to uh, my home village in what was it 90 end of 95, and it was like I show up and it's like, oh hey, a Bolme is here from the U.S. And the first question I was asked is, so who are you? And I said, I'm Pater's great grandson. And they're like, oh, okay. Everybody knew Pater. So yeah, they needed to know how I connected. And I'm like, wow. So I've already got that reputation of the guy who skipped town with his fiance, or with actually another guy's fiance. But that was the other guy. It was an arranged marriage that she did not want to be part of. So
Wow,
yeah.
for progressive even back then.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually had a cousin who went to Ireland, and I think it was our great grandparents who came over. And when he went over there, he went to the village where they originally from. And they're like, Devaney, we know a Devaney over here. And yes, there was an ancestor, but they like took him in, had lunch with them, sat and chat about how the history of that town was and who the Devaneys were for them. It's interesting to just see, like, if you follow back your history to whether it's Europe or wherever, and just meet people who may be distantly related to you.
Yep, and you can just see some of the family traits. It was pretty cool.
So, what are you working on now these days?
I'm honestly just trying to keep making money so I can get my last kid through college. I do have a couple of board game designs that I've been simmering on. Actually, the frustrating part is I've sold two of them, and after not getting published, rights reverted back to me. So, oh well. So yeah, I've got those two plus two others that I'm simmering on. I need to. One of them I designed so well that I designed all the fun out of it, and I need to take it back to the drawing board. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm working on is board games.
So, is that your new passion? Is board games?
It's. I'll tell you this. I was in the hobby gaming industry. I mean, I sold. If I count from when I sold 86 to 16, so like 30 years. A lot of it was as a freelance. For a short time, I was actually probably one of the highest paid people in gaming, and that was not me that said that. That was a former coworker. And after many, many years of low pay and lack of benefits, I have a stable job now, and I'm so relieved. So, gaming is back to a hobby,
Right.
which is a heck of a lot nicer from where it was. There's nothing like trying to support a family of four on $40,000 a year and no benefits. So,
That's a Herculean task.
yeah, it was not easy, and yeah, so I've got a good job. I've got great coworkers. I work on a great team. My boss, all the way up to the third level, bosses up to the third level, are all wonderful people. I'm getting paid well. I've got awesome benefits, and now I can afford to buy games instead of swap or swag at Gen Con. So,
Right.
which
It
is
always
actually
helps.
funny. When I first started going to Gen Con, the show floor would die at about noon on Sunday. Just die. There'd be nothing left. And that's when all the dealers would start to do swaps.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the people who had the best system was FASA, because they would basically stack up the books that their people wanted and stack up the books that your people wanted, and if they were even, good enough. They basically traded by the shelf inch.
Really.
Yes. And so
I
there was one year that I was interested in Shadowrun, and being from Seattle, and a whole bunch of them wanted a bunch of stuff from Artel Sorian, and no one from Artel Sorian had anything they wanted from Shadowrun. So I ended up with like literally 2.5 feet shelf feet worth of books from FASA because I got it all. So,
Is that when Sam Lewis was kind of in charge of FASA or part of FASA?
I don't have an answer to that.
Oh, okay. Because I met Sam Lewis years ago. Had some gripes about where he was taking the BattleTech universe, but he's like, "Hey, man, the Mike Stackpole, man, he's the one. We just give him money, and he tells us where he's going with it." So I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." But yeah, cool.
So it was a fun run, but and a wonderful way to spend time if you're a crazy single young man. But
So
can't
so
afford to be as crazy as it used to be.
with your board games, are you creating
Mhm.
like collaboration games, or are they actual? You know, you're playing against another player.
One of them is a party game. One of them is a semi-co-op, where you can all lose, but if you want to keep score, then you can figure out who wins. One of them is a one against many,
Kind of
and
like
one of them is a battle royale.
okay, interesting.
And one of them basically is one player plays, if you will, the empire, and the other players, however many there are, each have their own group of rebels.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I forget what the game is called. Might be just called Dracula, but I know of a board game. And I played it once in which one of the players takes the role of Dracula, while all the other
Yeah, yeah.
players play, his opponents and trying to
Try to
find them.
survive.
Yeah, try to survive and try to kill them. And I like the co-op games because it definitely allows all the players to, especially players who aren't as competitive, as it were,
Right, right.
to be like, because whenever you have a non-competitive player play a competitive game, you have no challenge, right? Because eventually they're
Yeah.
just gonna be like, whatever, I'll play.
Yeah, the challenge for me on competitive games is you have to restrict communication or you suffer from alpha gamer syndrome.
Right.
Right. If you have one guy who like has the game analyzed, you don't want him to direct everybody else through the steps, in which case basically it's just a one-player game with a bunch of people acting as wrists. So I played a couple of cooperative games that I liked where you literally were not allowed to talk to each other.
Hmm.
And that was cool. That was cool, right? It was one of them was a deck builder, right? And basically you could play cards on your partners, but you couldn't ask. You just basically played.
Yep.
And if they used it, if they could use it, they could use it. And if they couldn't, they couldn't.
Yeah, I've noticed that because I play a lot of Arkham Horror,
Right.
and just introducing the players first to the game, you kind of be that alpha player, right? Hey, you should do this, or you should, go here, defeat that portal, fight that monster, go get that clue.
Right.
But then it also gets into some players who are like, okay, tell me what to do the next time we play, as opposed to them, oh, I think it would be better off if this character did this, right?
Right. Yep. That was my first experience of pandemic. Was one player was like, okay, well, in this case, you should go here, you should go here, you should go here,
Right.
and that anything you do other than that is going to actually be counterproductive. So basically, at that point, you're not playing the game, which is one of the differences between board games and role playing games. Which honestly, role playing games in that sense are really great. I actually had one of my high school friends, we were a gaming group, and he started bringing his younger brother, um, who was a highly competitive guy. And after playing role playing games with us for about a year, he freely said that role playing games taught him how to live.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because it
I
wasn't all
mean,
about me. It wasn't all about me winning.
yeah, it's they're like beyond just fun, beyond just creativity. There's such a useful tool just for learning socialization and problem solving and working with
Yep.
your friends.
And teamwork.
Uh, yeah, like I don't think the importance of role playing games for any real gamer, the importance in their social development can ever be understated.
Yep. Sort of like being a waiter.
Yeah,
Those things that everybody should have to do for a while.
Yeah.
yeah. I think if more people were waiters, there wouldn't be the problem with people disrespecting them so much.
Exactly. If everyone had been a waiter, waiters would make a lot better living.
Yeah, any kind of service position where you have to deal with the public.
Yep.
Like everybody should be in that position at least once, just so they understand.
Yeah, and I think one of the trends, I'm not sure if I like it or not, is how simplistic role playing games have been slowly becoming, right? Yes, it helps with the ad lib and the role playing aspect of it, but I think you also miss out on some of the other skills that role playing would do, at least from my point of view, with the old crunch, right? I have to know math. I know have to have some type of understanding of the economy, and
You have to be able to
understand.
calculate probabilities and odds. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Should I use my healing potion now, or would it be better if I held on to it until I really, really need it, right?
Yep.
Or use a specific spell at a
Strategy.
certain time.
Organization. I mean, just so many things come into play with the crunchier systems that just aren't present with the really simplistic systems.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very double-edged sword. A more complex system is harder to learn, therefore harder to get people to try in the first place.
Yep.
But I think it's a more rewarding experience overall because the role-playing aspects, they can come out in any game you're playing. That just depends on the right group of people and the right GM.
Depends on yeah, exactly. The people in the GM, that's what matters. It's
yeah.
And let me tell you, playing Paranoia with one wrong guy in the group, not a good experience.
No, it goes from. I mean, Paranoia is such a different animal compared to most role-playing games. The first year, the group I tried playing it with, it was the most fun we ever had getting nowhere.
Yeah.
I literally was game mastering, and at the start of the adventure, just to see what happened, I just put them in a room and had them wait. It was a featureless room, and I had them wait. And within 5 minutes, 2/3 of them were dead. I didn't have to provide any stimulus. Oh, it was wonderful.
Computer doesn't even have to speak up. But I'll take another pill just in case.
Yeah, that was the one game I found hard to create campaigns for. Yeah, you could string along the modules, but it was very... Because if the players got too powerful, it seemed like they... Or how they basically worked the system. It just... I don't know. It got a lot... The power creep was too much, I think. Even though, as computer, you could definitely just slap them down.
I was going to say, I never had a character to live long enough to get powerful. It was just take another pill.
With 6 clones, you know, you had the opportunity to kill quite a few characters.
Yeah, you are much more skilled at that game than I am, because I went through those clones like tissue paper.
That's exactly it. We had one of our guys was who was given an experimental invisibility field generator, and at some point he got in trouble, and he turned it on. I slipped him a card, and the card said, "You've been disintegrated. Go ahead and role play a traitor." Right? And so he pushes the button, and he fades from sight. And the guy reads the card, and he looks up at me, and he says, "Really?" I said, "Yep." He says, "I run." And everyone's like shooting into the air, trying to gun him down, right?
Yeah.
His clone activates. First thing his clone does is send, "Fred Computer, I would like to volunteer to test the invisibility field generator." And they go on the adventure. They continue for a while, and the first sign of trouble, he says, "I hit the button and run."
Yeah.
Oh man,
I think he obliterated 4 of his own clones that way.
dude, the writing you did for that game, it's basically it's a role playing game if your GM was Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
Oh, and that I did a novel for Paranoia.
Mm.
I think when he said you read it, did you? Did we say you read it?
I
So
did
I
not
did a
read it.
novel, and
Yes.
they printed. I want to say they printed 10,000 copies. That's a engineer's wild guess. And I guess they sold 5,000 copies to Barnes and Noble, and it sold through. And so they asked Barnes and Noble if they wanted to reorder. And the guy said, "No, we only sold 5,000 copies."
Mm.
I said, "But you only bought 5,000 copies." He said, "Yeah, but I could lose my job for reordering a book that only sold 5,000 copies."
Jeez.
What an ass.
Like, really? So yeah, I would love to have done a whole series on that one. I had ideas for the next 3 novels following that family.
So
But
are
it
you
did not
Well,
come to pass.
are you still
that's
writing
a crime.
novels?
Am I still writing at all?
Well.
I'm a technical writer in my day job.
Oh, okay.
So I have not written for a while. Had some unfortunate experiences. Um, and again, some bad timing. Uh, and the media landscape has shifted enough now that it's going to be brutal at best to try and break back into writing
Hmm.
fiction, right? Um, which honestly is why having like a manga or comic strip series or something like that, that is actually a viable way to bootstrap up these days. But of course, you have to have the right partner who's in it for the long haul. So,
Right.
or you have to know how to draw, which I can cartoon, but I can't draw to the level that I would need to be able to pull that off.
Got it.
Unless it was all done at night. I could do that.
You go the KODT route and just use the same stick figures over and over
There
again.
you go. Order of the Stick, man. Those guys are. There's your stick
Oh,
figures.
no. Order of the Stick. Yeah, that was a good one too. I haven't read that in a while. I wonder how that's doing these days.
It's doing. It's you need to go catch up.
So we got about
I would.
another half hour for the show. So are you still good?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So
go ahead.
go ahead.
Nah, I was gonna ask him. Yeah, that's what we get into when it's just a bunch of voices. So you said you hung out with Dave Ackerman for a little while. Did you guys actually do any gaming, or was it more or less, coming up with ideas?
So, funny thing about Dave Ackerman, I first met him over the phone. It was a 3-way call with him, Mike, and me, and I didn't like him at all. Did not like Dave Ackerman at all. Um, but turns out he's actually my brother from another mother. um, when I was down there with him, we'd be driving along. We're driving along, and of all things, we have a McDonald's menu. And Dave reads a menu item, and we both make the same joke at the exact same time. And he reads the next menu item, and we both make the joke at the exact same time. And we had Dave's wife laughing so hard. And the synergy of it was astounding. Uh, so, yeah. So when I was down there, did we game? No, we did everything but. He actually was the one that introduced me to Babylon 5, which, in my opinion, remains the best science fiction that's ever been done.
Really?
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
Um,
Expanse was pretty good.
there have been movies. Expanse was good. Expanse was good, and Firefly could have
I was gonna
matched
say,
Babylon 5 if it had gone on. Babylon 5, have you seen it?
I've seen a few seasons. Yes.
So,
I
it,
tried watching it. I could never get past the goofy aliens.
so the challenge that Dave gave to me was watch season 1. And if at the end of season 1 you are not hooked, then hunt. And I got hooked, and I hooked my son, my daughter, one of my daughter's best friends, my wife, both my brothers. Who else? It's you have to watch it in order as part of the issue, right? You can't, unlike Star Trek, where you can just watch an episode here or there.
Yeah, because of
You
the
have to watch it in
wars
order
that
because there's
happened.
it's one continuous story, right?
Yeah.
And every time I've watched it, mind you, I've watched it. Let me think. How many times have I watched it through? I watched it through myself, then with my wife, then with my daughter, then with my son. So I've watched it through, I think now 5 times, all the way through.
Wow.
Every time I pick up on new stuff.
Yeah, I think it appeals to
The
people in the same way that Star Trek appeals to people. And I've never been able to get into Star Trek either.
But Star Trek is different. See, Star Trek, they have the 2 minute rule, right? So, oh my goodness, there's 2 minutes left in the episode. Time to wave our magic hands and solve the issue and move on so that everything's
Yeah,
back where it started.
formula
Right.
TV.
Right. So, for example, in Star Trek, you might come across a planet and there's a plague that's killing all the people on the planet. They can't do anything because of the Prime Directive, and they can't do this and can't do that. And then 2 minutes to go, Dr. Crusher finds something, and they spray a fog over the whole planet, and everyone's saved. Right?
Yep.
Babylon
Yeah.
5. There is an episode where in Babylon 5, one particular race starts dying from a disease. They don't tell anyone because of the religious implications that this has. So that more and more of them start dying, and the race starts abandoning their planet, and traveling to get away from it. On Babylon 5, the disease starts to vector into other aliens, which results in, shall we say, species riots, which force Babylon 5 to sequester all of the people of that race in one end of the station, where unfortunately they're all together with this highly infectious disease. And they, 2 minutes to go, Dr. Franklin finally gets a vaccine. He does, partway through, he develops a vaccine that'll save other aliens, but not the species because it interacts badly with something in their blood or something like that, right? So they can't administer that. 2 minutes to go, he finally gets something that'll mask that out. They go to start administering the injections, and they're all dead.
Ooh.
And the fact that they're all dead becomes important 3 years later.
I mean, I dig shows like that. I just and I love the look of the ships. Like, I'll say that right off the bat. The space fighters were some of the coolest space fighters I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, and they use Newtonian physics.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And that was the first. I'd never seen that in a show of its type at the time it came out. I think the only thing I'd ever seen that in outside of like hard science, like 2001, was the last Starfighter of all places.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I understand what you're saying about the aliens. Honestly, you could probably just skip the pilot for Babylon 5 because they changed the alien um, makeup between the pilot and the first episode. Um, the ones that were the hardest for me initially to get through were the Centauri who had the like fan like hair. But you just
if you just look at them as peacocks, and it's their hairstyle. It's a fashion. It's a sign of authority for them and class.
Yeah,
And
those
actually,
guys were hard to look at, but what really got me were the Yoda looking things. And I may be mixing it up with a different show.
I think you're mixing it up because I do not recall. There's one animatronic insect guy, but everyone else is humanoid
Okay.
and human sized and played by human actors. So you must be crossing something up.
It's entirely possible. When it came out, there were a lot of sci-fi shows on at
Yes,
the
there
time.
were. Yes, there were. So I would encourage you to give that another shot.
You know, I may do that. I may go give that another try. I know I've got a friend who will be very excited to hear that I might be giving it another try.
So watch season one in order, and there are like about 5 episodes in season one that you could completely skip if you want to shorten the time or miss one of the worst episodes in the series. So, but yeah, so I mean, I with my son, I mean, I had to force him to, right? And it was like I had to get him to just watch one episode a week, please, right? And I couldn't even do that. And then finally, it closes season one. It ends. I turn the lights on, and my son says, "Yeah, I'm hooked."
I mean, I'm
And
notorious to get to watch some of these shows. Like it took me Avatar: The Last Airbender had been off the air 8 years before I finally gave that a shot, and
sure,
that I kicked myself so hard about that I still feel it.
Well,
so
just
yeah,
to,
just as a benchmark, like I said, it was forcing my son to watch an episode every 1 or 2 weeks. By the time we got to the end of the series, we were watching 3 to 4 episodes a week, and when we were at 6 episodes left, we binged them all up one night. So, just saying.
I
Well, I
understand.
I'm
need
an
something new to watch.
I'm
Just
an
finished
evangelist,
all of
as
the
you can
House of
tell.
Usher. So,
Um,
uh,
I have
yeah.
no problem with binging because I think
No problem at all with binging.
with Breaking Bad, when I finally was introduced to Breaking Bad, I think it was in the 5th season. I think I ran through 5 seasons within a month.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
bad. I didn't get a lot of sleep that month.
I bet you did. Jeez.
It was a great series. Anyways, just to get back into the cyberpunk genre,
Yeah.
have you seen or read Cyberpunk Red at all in the rules?
I went through it. Um, so yes, I have. I actually cleared out basically all my role playing stuff, so I gave it to a guy who was uh, very, very excited to get it. So, but I did read through it, and I like what they did with it. I just, had to be realistic, and I wasn't going to get a chance to play it.
Got it.
Well, you're always welcome in my games.
You run them online?
I do.
He does.
Oh, I'll have to circle up on that.
All right.
Except it's IU, if you don't mind that.
Yeah, it's Interlock Unlimited, and we still play 2020. So.
Even better.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
so you did read it. You kind of liked it, or I mean, the one thing I liked about Red was how it evolved, especially with the roles, and how it took the roles and kind of fleshed out the skills for them.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciated that, and um, it was definite improvement in the life path. Um, but of course, that I got it at the same time that I got RuneQuest, so
Ah,
I'm like, I'm torn.
yes,
No. So
I can imagine.
it's always tough. Um, Hard role playing games, and by hard I mean like science and science based. It's always tougher. because hosts are so much more lethal.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, they are.
and so it's harder.
And you also can't suspend disbelief quite as much. Like
Exactly. Right.
it has to work within the physics that you at least have a casual understanding of. I
Yeah.
mean, fantasy you can just do whatever with. Like that's the beauty of fantasy. But
Exactly. Exactly.
with
Right.
science fiction, especially the harder science fiction and the near future stuff, it has to stay grounded uh, in order for everybody to
No.
have the same buy-in.
Exactly. Right. I mean, you look at Expanse, right? Um, some great, if you will, role playing moments in there.
Oh,
Really well
absolutely.
scripted, but how many how many gunfights did they actually get it?
Yep.
Right?
I mean, not as many as people want to think, because in
Exactly.
space, gunfights are freaking
They're really nasty. And I
yeah,
appreciated that when they're going into battle on the Rocinante, they're all wearing spacesuits as their hull gets punched through in
yeah.
100 different places. But I mean, Burton, great tough guy, right? You gotta love him. But
Yep.
how many times does he fire a pistol? Likewise, Serenity. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Again,
there were gunfights, but people died.
Yes.
I
So
mean, both of those shows, you get the idea. I mean, even more so with The Expanse, that like that, it just feels like it came out of someone's RPG campaign.
yep,
With with Firefly, you had guys like Ben Edlund writing it, who created the Tick and all that. So you get where that humor and that dialogue and that those situations come from. But even then, it feels it lends itself so well to a role playing game because of those moments. Whereas the more fantastical stuff, it's hard for me to buy into as well. That's why I don't really
yeah.
do the fantasy much anymore.
See, but to me, that's one of the inherent challenges that's hard to crack in Cyberpunk. What does everybody want? Everyone wants a big gun and lethal cyberware, right? But if you actually use it, it's exceptionally dangerous. And so
Yeah,
you want your
it's more dangerous for your character to fire his gun than it is to just be cool.
right, and so then you're, uh, in a way, you're not using the stuff that you spent all your money on, right? And it's all about posturing and maneuvering and intelligence, which I mean, I love that stuff, I really do, but it's often not what people think when they think about cyberpunk
Right.
Right.
as a general genre, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a
I
tough
mean,
balance. Cyberpunk is to me is one of the hardest games to game master.
but is it though? I mean, because some of the most famous examples of the genre are very much that more cerebral, like talk your way out of it. Like Deckard in Blade Runner only fires his gun like twice in the whole movie.
Well, he gets his gun slapped out of his hand before he can
Yeah,
fire it a couple
he fires
times.
at
Right.
Batty, Leon, and oh, criminy, what's the dancer's name?
Press.
Pris,
Chris.
Zora.
So he fires at those three. And yeah, I mean, it's very little gunfight in the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it's
And
it's
yet,
it's not an action movie. It's a very cerebral romp.
exactly, and it's wonderful. And yet, you look at the supplements for Cyberpunk, right? Got how many books of arms and armor, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because it's still fun.
it is, but
I don't want to get my head turned into a canoe, you know. So that's the challenge, and like I say, it's a tough challenge, especially to improv. Right? I mean, I can improv paranoia all day long. I can improv RuneQuest all day long. Um, Cyberpunk is one that I really have to sit down and plan.
See, and Cyberpunk was the first game I ever ran, and I ran it like the first 10 years I ran it. I never planned anything. It was all off the cuff stuff. So I didn't. Now,
I'm
granted, my
impressed.
games back then were a lot more action oriented, and I was a lot more forgiving. Um, so I may not have started out as a very good GM in that regard. But
Did they
yeah,
have
it
fun?
was all.
That's the only
Yeah, everybody
benchmark of
had
a good
fun.
GM. There you go. That's the only benchmark of a
Um,
good GM.
and as someone who has, contributed to the problem, like half of Data Fortress is just giant gear catalogs that I wrote. Uh, because anytime I saw a cool piece of tech in a comic book or a movie, I was like, well, okay, I got to grab a picture of that and write up stats for it.
Well,
So I'm part of the problem.
it all depends on the campaign you're running, right? So currently I'm
Well,
running
that's 100%.
right. So currently I'm running a high rider campaign, right, in space. Guess what? I don't believe anyone has fired a gun yet, and I'm already 20 sessions in. So yeah, there's been some fist fights, not a lot, but it's mostly been role playing, planning, because what the campaign is basically the revolt on O'Neill 2 during the Fourth Corporate War, right? The 7 hour war that liberates O'Neill 2. So I'm building
Sure.
up to that event, right? So it's a lot of subterfuge, finding out how the different factions on the station work, and trying to bring the high rider factions together, because each one of them have their own ideas of things, and then you also have the ESA, who's also the true bad guys that you want to have all these factions agree with and try to overthrow. So it's been that kind of role playing experience versus me running a campaign for a strike team that is seeing combat on a consistent basis, and is going to have more gunplay per session than this particular one. So I think it all depends on the level of 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 the campaign in which there's more combat versus there's not. And I think Cyberpunk allows you to do a lot more role playing instead of trying to come or finding a solution only through violence, right?
Right.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, the dangers of the cyberpunk system, like just the inherent deadliness of it,
Yep.
lends itself to drama so much better than any system I've ever played.
Well,
Uh,
Call of Cthulhu is a close second, if not a leading one.
okay, yeah, I mean, GURPS is out there too, but like the point remains, systems like that where your character can die from even like minor wounds, they create a sense of drama that other games like Dungeons and Dragons just don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the
Yes.
one thing I've seen with Dungeons and Dragons and games of that ilk is a lot of players just want to brute force themselves through the situation, which doesn't lend to trying to be creative and trying to solve the problem that you're addressed with in a different manner.
Yeah, I'm fine up until that last hit point. Like that doesn't
Yep.
that
That's
doesn't lend
exactly
itself to
it.
drama.
So that's one of the things that I like about RuneQuest is you're not sitting here bonking each other with a boffer stick until one of you falls over, right? You're taking hits to your arms and chest, and with every attack, there's the chance that he slips past your armor and just
kills you outright. But
Yeah,
you
I
take the
mean,
combat
you have
seriously.
effects.
So, which again is, that's it's an interesting. We saw this. I worked on the Doomtown card game for a while, and Doomtown it's a horror western themed trading card game, and new players would get into massive gunfights in the first turn, and one of them would lose. And so they say this game is bad. I'm like, no, it's sort of like leading with your queen in chess. You don't do that, right? But
Yeah, you're just
they
working against yourself there, buddy.
exactly. But you give them a Western thing, the first thing they think is shootouts, and so they want to do a shootout, right? And it's just the nature of the beast. Um, but I mean, honestly, Doomtown is a really well played game. I actually played a game that it was only a two-turn game, but it took 45 minutes of move and counter move, and one of the best games I've ever played. I can't even remember if I won or lost. I just enjoyed playing it so much. It's, it was very considered as opposed to the, slap leather, draw gun, shoot, right? Um, but I think that's one of the challenges for uh, novice players. I think this has been largely addressed in Red, but there's a lot of emphasis on guns and not enough on everything else.
Yep.
And I think that has hampered my ability to game master. Because it's, for whatever reason, it's been hard for me to get out of that mindset.
Well, it's easy, right? To just, okay, I'm going to throw a bunch of monsters. Here are their hit points. Here's their attack
Exactly.
thing. It's all numbered and just rolling dice, as opposed to
Yeah.
coming up
It's a
with,
dungeon crawl in an alley. No, wait, we can't
yeah,
do that.
versus coming up with a puzzle that's challenging, and how the players can approach it. Because oftentimes players can get into a rut where they're like, I just don't know what to do, right? And as a GM, you have some frustration with that because you're like, I thought I was presenting this as in a very clear cut way for you guys to be able to understand how to what are the options you have in front of you to tackle this challenge.
Yeah. And see, that is one of the difficult balancing points. I have had situations where it's like, this is a puzzle, and if they don't get it, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Um, which is why, to me, that's one of the things that I've tried to do in games is it is neither a physical puzzle nor an intellectual puzzle, or a physical gauntlet, I should say, or an intellectual puzzle, but more of a social
Yep.
sort of thing, right? Um,
I mean, every group
what
is different, and you definitely have to gauge your group before you start trying to implement that stuff. If that makes any
that is
sense,
also true. Yep.
because some people are going to be better at doing the physical stuff on paper, and some people are going to be better at figuring out like intellectual puzzles, and some people are really highly social. Uh, and some groups may just not have any of that at all.
Hmm.
I think my change, the biggest change in my style of GMing, especially for Cyberpunk, is when I stopped trying to just, okay, make up whatever character you want. I'll figure a scenario to fit them all in. Like, that's just a headache in the making. Now, the campaigns I tend to run are structured in a way that the characters start out working together. They have
Yep.
a unified goal. They're part of a nomad group traveling across the country, or they're part of a military group fighting a war, or they're part of like an espionage team doing James Bond shit
Right.
all over the place, or
Yeah.
cops, or
They got that social tie that binds them together.
yeah, private detectives. There's a theme, that I can then fit the character, like they can create characters that will fit into that game.
Right.
Because trying to finagle a rocker boy, a corporate, a cop, and a solo to all work together,
Yeah.
just it hurts because the cop's got a regular job he's got to go to.
Yep. Well, again, like
No,
I
I'm
think
with
you
you on that.
mentioned it with the game you're running and how our group has been kind of avoiding the combat because we know, I know, at least from my point of view, whenever I play a Cyberpunk character, I try to avoid combat as much as possible and find the different solutions as opposed to just brute forcing it because I know how deadly the game is. And I don't care how much SP I have. And I think that was one of the complaints of Cyberpunk 2020 is the power creep that you can have when it comes to SP. As a GM, I always had something that I don't care if you're like you have an SP of 40, I will get a way in which I can defeat you, and you will have no way of preventing me from stopping me defeating you in one way or another, whether it's through EP.
Are you sure you're not a paranoia game master there?
Well, the problem is I always had the humor. The humor element was always a little hard for me to be sadistic and funny at the same time.
It just I think previous games that people play also create that difficulty.
Yeah.
Like if your first game is Cyberpunk, if that's the first game you play, I've noticed that for people who get introduced to role playing through Cyberpunk, they're much more open to problem solving that doesn't involve violence.
Yep.
Whereas if you're a D&D player, like I said, you're good to go until that last hit point drops, and once you reach a certain level, there's nothing in the game that can one shot you anymore. So
Right.
that trying to get people from other games into Cyberpunk and get them past that hurdle, that is a college course in itself.
So there was actually when I was. By the way, I'm just curious, guys. Which edition of D&D?
Did I start
Which
on?
was your favorite? Just no, your personal favorite.
Ooh.
If you could play one edition of D&D, or let me phrase it, if you had to, which would it be?
That's a tough choice.
Honestly, I'm going to say 5e, but only because D&D Beyond means I don't have to look through a bunch of books and do a bunch of research.
See, for me,
it makes everything
it's
easier,
4th
so I
edition.
can just play the game. 4th edition, really?
4th edition. I am such a fan of 4th edition.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody express that opinion before.
Well, what can I say? I am mentally deficient in many ways. One of the things I wanted to do, and again, unfortunately, the gaming group I was with broke up right before this could happen. It is possible in 4th edition, if you do a certain cleric build, that you can never cause a hit point of damage. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be the character who came down to make sure that the players lived up to their destiny. But I could not directly interfere, right? So I wanted to go from 1st through 20th or 30th, whatever it was, 30th, without ever drawing a single drop of blood. That was a goal. I thought that would be a really cool thing to try. And just sit there and buff and debuff and, heal and light and darkness and whatever it takes, but never hurt anybody.
Yeah. One of our audience likes to thank you, Ed, for Rach. And he says that freelancing sounds like it was harsh.
I'm in a much better psychological place, so probably Dave was right that the therapy has worked.
Yeah, for me in Dungeons and Dragons, 5e is good. first edition is probably my long lost love because that was the edition that I played for at least a decade. Second edition is a close second because of how long I played with it. Third edition was mind blowing in the shift of the mechanics of it, and then it just got into this weird power creep versus first and second, which I felt had more role playing aspects, versus third, which started turning into a very game mechanic system.
Sure.
I'd never played fourth, just because of the time. I think I was a big World of Warcraft player then, so I didn't have any time and I didn't have any players who played fourth, so I really never got exposed to it. But I got into fifth, and I thought fifth had some good mechanics that kind of evolved the system in a way. But yeah, I would say, just the fun games I had with first and second edition, and just the craziness we just bent those rules. Lord,
the
There's a
first time
purity
I
to
tried,
that time.
the first time I tried playing Dungeons and Dragons, it was with Basic, and I didn't enjoy it, mostly because I was my fantasy. I was coming from Conan and films like Excalibur, not so much Tolkien at the time, and the endless hit points bugged me. The lack of freedom in character creation bugged me. Like, I couldn't create the character I wanted to create. Everything was bits and pieces, but there really was no way to multi-class back then.
Right.
Right.
And I had a vindictive GM, and that just kind of soured me on everything. I didn't play role-playing games again for about 8 years, and then a friend of mine who was in college invited me down to the Kansas City Art Institute to play Cyberpunk, and that got me hooked. I didn't play. It was another couple of years before I tried Dungeons and Dragons again, and that was second edition, and I never cared for the rules. I don't know. I just never cared for the rules until third edition. Third edition, the rules finally made a little bit more sense to me. And then it just became a glut of crap. I played third edition. I played 3.5. I enjoyed it, but I got really sick of having to go through like 8 different books to create a character.
Yeah.
And
then the whole open source that hit.
Yeah. With fourth edition, it really seemed like it eliminated everything outside of combat. Like, all the spells were geared towards combat. You couldn't just fly around the place anymore. You couldn't. I don't know. It just wasn't for me.
Right.
And then fifth edition, like I said, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do if it weren't for D&D Beyond, which just does all the work for me. And
I will admit that is a very useful tool.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're having a great conversation. However, we are 2 minutes away from time. If you want, Ed, yeah. Amazing how 2 hours go by.
I know, it's like, whoop.
Yeah. So Ed, if you want to stick around on the channel while we wrap up the show and still chat with us a little more, that's fine. However, 2 hours we're trying to cap off on this. So first off, I'd like to say thank you and appreciate you taking the time out, hanging out with us.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, us grognards are ecstatic that a lot of you guys are still around and still kind of touching base with Cyberpunk again, and just to hear some of the insights from the old days, and just seeing where some of these ideas came from, especially Rach being being a very key character now in the lore, and understanding where he came from, as it were.
We're as interested in the lore of the creators themselves as we are in the lore of the game. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Ed. We've been looking forward to
Absolutely.
talking to you for quite a while.
Yep.
Absolutely. Sorry about the delays.
No, you're just fine.
Perfect timing, as it were. All right, so I'd like to thank everyone who attended now and those who are going to be listening into the future. I am Cybersmily. I have a site called cybersmily.net where I have a bunch of Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2020 utilities to help you manage your games. I haven't done, I've said this for the past few episodes, I haven't done a lot lately. I still trying to get it together and actually start implementing a couple more things. I have ideas. I just need to put pen to paper, as it were. So you can check me out there. I have my own Discord, as well as I'm on a ton of various Discord servers for Cyberpunk. So if you do hash or at Cybersmily, you're probably going to get me. I also lurk about the 2 or 3 Cyberpunk or Reddit threads. So I'm also there, checking out what people say. Yeah, and then, of course, the show here.
I am Wisdom000, otherwise known as Derek Bernier. I want to thank everybody for joining. You can visit me at my site, Datafortress2020, where I've written source books, gear catalogs, rules, all sorts of stuff. Plus, I've got an archive of pretty much all the stuff that was out there that has died off over the years. I am on Facebook at the Cyberpunk Uncensored channel, the Datafortress 2020 group, and the Cyberpunk 2020 group. I'm on Discord, where I'm active kind of in the various Cyberpunk Discord channels, more often at Smiley's site than any other. I'm on Reddit at the various Cyberpunk channels, and feel free to reach out at any of these places to get a hold of me or Will. Yep. We love to hear your comments, suggestions, complaints, and criticisms. Heck, we just love to hear from you.
Yep.
If you have any ideas for future shows or any questions you'd like to ask, by all means, send them our way. We'd like to thank Mr. Ed Bolme one more time. Thank you, Ed. You're welcome on the show anytime. Please come back and visit us.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll talk to you guys very soon.
Yeah. We also like to thank Rob Mulligan and Cybernation Uncensored for hosting us. Check out his Discord as well as the website at cybernationuncensored.com. And we will be back in about 2 weeks. So until then, I think.
Yeah, and you can also catch our old shows at the Cybernation Uncensored YouTube channel under the Tales from the Forlorn Dopes playlist.
As well as on Cybernation Uncensored's podcast channels. So, cool.
I always forget about that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Till next time.
Bye.
Cybernation Uncensored.